All right, what's up, everybody? So we're going to do a very quick recap today. Maxim is currently traveling and has some other things on his agenda. So I wanted to do a quick pre-recorded video to discuss a little bit about what's going on with the markets and how we can react to everything in the global economic world that's kind of impacted markets as of late. Obviously, unless you're living under a very large rock, you've probably noticed there was some world tensions, and I would argue a little more than just tensions, full-on airstrikes between the U.S. and Iran and technically not the U.S., but an airbase in Qatar. And this led to a supposed truce between Israel and Iran. I won't go too much into it other than the fact that than saying that this has impacted markets, undoubtedly. There are plenty of publications out there that are covering the nitty-gritty details of it. We do have a report that goes into some more details that you'll actually see later today or within the next 24 hours in collaboration with Bybit. But long story short, going back to last Sunday, 5 days before the time of this recording, there was a pretty sizable dip in the markets as a reaction to the U.S. suddenly bombing Iran and very polarizing opinions arising from that resulted in a bit of a market scare. We saw Bitcoin down to 102, 103K, and eventually it rose back up. I can kind of zoom in here and just show you the last week of price action, and I'll hide the transaction volume for a moment. Let's make this nice and granular. So here you go. You see it actually going, I actually underestimated how big the dip was. It got all the way down to 98.5K. I totally forgot that this happened. I was only thinking about this one on the 23rd. But yeah, first time under 100K in about, what, something like a month and a half or so. Last time we saw it in early May. Call that 7 weeks-ish. But if we look at what happened, we had the big dip here, a little bit of a rise as we kind of waited to see how Iran would react. There was another bombing. This was Iran's retaliation. And then suddenly we start hearing rumors of a truce. And this was the buy the rumor and then the sell the news. And eventually we kind of started to get back on track. Yes, we're down just a little over the last 48-ish hours or so, but consider this kind of similar, a much smaller scale version of what we saw with the tariffs 2.5 months ago, where the tariffs rocked everything. The uncertainty pushed people toward the right action in their minds being to sell. And then as clarity was brought forth by world leaders, we started to see markets resolve and go back to their usual business. So the default approach, going really all the way back to the most recent thing I can think of that was similar to this, which was the Russia and Ukraine conflict from February of 2022 when that was first announced. And there was a kind of a 2-week dip followed by a long-term rise as people kind of started to realize what it was, how much or how little it was going to affect things. People tend to, especially retail, when I say people, they tend to side on the cautious end when they hear the news of a potential war or a conflict that could arise. But once it starts to sound contained, or at least people feel like this is the maximal impact it will have on my life or my investments, that's when they start to get more comfortable and buy back in and accumulate once again, or at least have sentiment shift back positive. Oftentimes it's initiated by whales and key stakeholders, where retail drops their coins in a panic, thinking they're going to lose half their portfolio, and then whales scoop it up and quickly push prices back up to the range we had just seen a few days ago or a few weeks ago. So that kind of happened with the tariffs on a very large scale. That was the biggest dip we had seen since COVID back in March of 2020. But even with the tariffs, we eventually started to see things recover. Trump started to work things out with China. Keep in mind, by the way, those things are not yet resolved between Trump and the EU and Trump and China. So there can still be tariff threats down the road come mid to late July when we start to hear more news on their progress. But that's a very unpredictable thing. And at this point, it seems as though the markets are hoping for the best, whales and retail alike, in terms of that situation. Now, in terms of other market performances, you can see everything's kind of dwarfed here because we've got stuff like Grok and Say at the very tail end of this chart. But Bitcoin's actually up about 2.8% over the past 7 days. And that, has an asterisk to it because it was a very volatile week that saw us going as high as 108.2K and as low as 98.5K. So pretty wide range, ending with us being slightly up for crypto's top market cap. Ethereum, on the other hand, has started to lag behind, and we've seen some interesting patterns where sentiment is a little more pessimistic toward the number 2 cap asset than it was for much of the last 2 months when it was actually outperforming Bitcoin. And meanwhile, we have a lot of more laggers than coins that are actually keeping up with Bitcoin. This is pretty normal when it comes to times of turmoil and uncertainty. If you see Bitcoin making a push toward 110K over the next week, you'll probably start to see a lot of these altcoins playing catch up. But remember that it's a gamble, and we don't give investment advice on this channel. We can simply tell you how markets are reacting to things, what the sentiment is, and of course, we'll take a look at some on-chain things in our brief video that we're going to do here. Other standouts, one of the Trump coins has just gotten crushed, Trump with hat. There's also the MAGA Trump coin and official Trump. So it's confusing, to say the least, what's been going on with Trump lately, but the different Trump coins, I should say. But as far as one of the biggest losers in the top 1,000, really, Trump with hat was one of them. BitGet has actually done pretty well. Verum has done well, up 10%. Aave up a nice 4%. Aptos plus 11%. But you can see these are pretty few and far between. Bitcoin Cash up 3.5%. Most coins are actually down in the top 50 to 100 market caps. Social volume, Bitcoin up a little bit with all the talks of Israel and Iran and the US, of course. XRP had a pretty big nugget of news come out yesterday where the Judge Torres, decided to block a mutual request for a $50 million settlement between Ripple and the SEC. So there was actually kind of mixed reactions to that. Sentiment actually is interestingly up for XRP a bit. I can show you. We just put this out yesterday. So blue here is the sentiment for XRP in terms of positive versus negative commentary. The higher it is, the more bullish people are. The lower it is, the more bearish people are. You can see this huge sentiment jump in mid-June, just about 11 days ago for Ethereum. And we actually got a full market top, so a ton of Ethereum traders got punished right here for getting a little too greedy. You can see how fearful people were. Down here, the red is Bitcoin. So Ethereum and Bitcoin both saw their lowest sentiment in a month. Coincidentally, I'm being sarcastic, coincidentally, the day of the airstrikes from the US to Iran. And what do you know? Right after that happened, we see this big jump. It was an ideal point to actually buy. I wouldn't say anytime there's worrisome or terrible news of airstrikes or war, that's not always going to be a good buy time for crypto. But if the report happens to be a temporary issue or something that puts kind of a cap on further issues like this one supposedly was, it can actually lead to good news. So I think in this case, the markets realized, okay, maybe this is as bad as it's going to get. And sure enough, around here, when things got a little volatile, we heard that there was a truce between Israel and Iran, and that allowed markets to go up even further. So in this case, for those who gambled on the airstrike being nothing that would lead to further escalation outside, of course, the Iran retaliation, they ended up doing pretty well for themselves. But just remember, it's not always just an automatic like situation where you see the rest of the crowd panicking over something that's happening in the real world and you just go, well, they're panicking, it's time to buy. Think of COVID. I mean, the first month and a half was actually pretty scary. Granted, the second half of 2020 was an incredible time for crypto, but sometimes it can last a while. So just be aware that they're not always just instant, daily swings as soon as bad news jumps in. Anyways, enough about that. I want to talk about whales and sharks as well. And it's mostly pretty good news here. Since June 9th, the last 18 days, we've seen wallets with 10 to 10K BTC adding about 22.2K more Bitcoin to their wallets. You saw the big dip here between June 3rd and 9th, where they dropped 42.5K BTC, but they're reversing course now, looking pretty good. We also saw that the amount of wallets that are holding at least 10 Bitcoin, they've been going back up rapidly. You can see how much they dropped as a lot of profit taking was happening en route to that May 22nd all-time high. But over the past 5 weeks, as we retraced and got a little volatile, we've seen the amount of 10 plus BTC wallets returning to about a 3.5 month high, the largest amount since May 12th, that being 152,280 Bitcoin wallets approximately. So great news there. And combine that with the fact that key stakeholders collectively hold more and more coins right now. I'd say the future is looking pretty bright, albeit with all of these obstacles, the tariff concerns still, the potential of something still happening in the Middle East or with the US. Again, there are news channels that cover that more than we do. We're not a world news channel, but just know that there are things that can quickly change the whales' minds. But based on what we know now, it's looking pretty good. I also wanted to discuss some of the funding rate going on. I'll actually take a live look because this was about a day and a half ago. But if we look at the Bitcoin and Ethereum total funding rates aggregated by asset. So we've seen Bitcoin actually showing pretty consistent longs across exchanges. Nothing too significant, but certainly not, neutral. So people are actually showing a little bit of confidence toward Bitcoin at this time. In fact, I want to make sure this is refreshed here. Let's actually go hard refresh to make sure the dates are aligned. There we go. That's much better. So there was this big short segment right here. And we actually saw prices continue to go up, eventually go down, and then the shorts got eliminated and are kind of back in neutral range right now. Meanwhile, Ethereum has flipped into short town. So a lot of people betting against Ethereum. They believe that, this temporary rebound where they were outpacing Bitcoin was a fluke. You can see how much they were really trying to bet against Ethereum when everything was crashing. And a ton of liquidations happened after the truce occurred in the following day or two. Went back neutral, and now we're back to short again. And this time there's not, a major headline related to what's going on in the Middle East right now. This is just people not believing in Ethereum. So this is typically a good sign, since markets move the opposite direction of the crowd's expectations, that we might see a little bit of an uptick. If these get liquidated, that would just add rocket fuel to the direction of Ethereum's price, and perhaps lead to a very quick recovery to $2,500 and above. On the alpha narrative side, so we just got a fresh set of data from the last week, and we do see that there are some rises in discussions related to Bitcoin versus fiat money right now. GameFi has seen a little bit of a boost. Virtuals, stable coins also saw a big boost about a day ago. Lots of discussions related to Tether and USD coin, yield generating versus payment stable coins, lots of that as well. Global adoption of stablecoin powered payments. So stables got a big boost. They're kind of back to normal now, but it's interesting to see just how giant this spike was. Whales are on people's minds as of today, especially pertaining to Bitcoin and Ethereum. So look at how key stakeholders are going to be controlling markets going into next week. Of course, we have the data for it, which is really nice, and the picture is looking pretty good overall. And then finally, Kaido, Laudio, and Yappers. And I'll just read what the AI description is showing. Messages from Twitter indicate a strong focus on the crypto industry, particularly on projects like Arbitrum and Yapio. The community seems highly engaged and active with discussions about on-chain ecosystems, farming, and engagement on social media platforms. There's also mention of partnerships with Kato AI and Cookie DAO, as well as the importance of verified attention as a measurable asset. So that's kind of a recap of some of the topics that are standing out just in the last couple of days. You can see just how much Ethereum got tons and tons of discussion during that crash. This is when it was most polarizing, and we saw all those shorts going on that last screen. So very interesting to see that spike. There's another GameFi spike that was a lot bigger than the one that just happened. Newly listed coins like Move, Bulla, Puff, DMC, C-Citron, and SES. And way over here about a week ago, we had art as a trending topic as well. AI, Bitcoin versus fiat money again on a larger scale. This was Bitcoin, and this was BlackRock, which had been making another big investment, buying over $750 million worth of Ethereum in June, and also substantial purchases of Bitcoin. So yeah, this is completely free, whether you're a Sandbase Pro member or not. Just head over to our social trends page here, and you'll see Alpha Narratives right here on the left side of my screen, and you can check it out. Just remember, it updates once every Friday. So the next batch you'll see would be a week from now. And then I wanted to finish up by just showing a few of the leaders on our activity matrix. If you haven't checked out this model, make sure to look through a couple of the articles we've written on our insights page. In short, we're seeing tons of positivity for Toncoin right now. Radium is up there as well. Unis said Leo. Litecoin, seeing a lot of bullishness at the moment. Quant is up there as well. Speaking of Litecoin, they were leading a few other... No, maybe not. They were yesterday. They had like a big jump in mean dollar invested age I wanted to show you. Yeah, this drop right here was pretty significant. Generally, it's a pretty good sign when dormant coins are moving, because it's making the average age of coins sitting in wallets get younger. And those extra circulated coins can be key to driving up prices. So watch to see if there's another more sizable drop than this coming up over the weekend or heading into next week. A few other things to note. Overall, some of the most active coins right now would be Stasis Euro, ApeCoin, which I haven't heard from in quite a while, Euler Finance, Chiliz, OnBeam, Swipe, Audius, Sandbox, Mochaverse, and Bitcoin Cash sneaking in here in the top 10 I'm curious what's going on with BCH because they are a top 30 market cap, and it looks like they've got a huge spike in whale transactions. Social dominance is up there, even mean dollar invested age. So if I go to BCH really quick, check out whale transactions. Yeah, that's huge. So easily the biggest of the year right now, happening right now. Lots of engagement and prices have gone up ever since. You can also see the mean dollar invested age is shrinking at the moment, and that's a double good sign. So a couple of bullish signals going on for BCH. We don't cover it often. I know it's a very polarizing token that a lot of people in the community swear they'll never touch. Other people do believe in it. But we do see some signals indicating there's something brewing here. So I'm looking forward to maybe checking in with another video later in the next week to see how much this rally was sustained now that it's back above $500 for the first time in about 5 months. So I'll end it there. I think overall, guys, just pay attention to the overall mood of the crowd, which is leaning a bit toward, it seems like they're leaning bullish again due to this rally. I know it hasn't been a huge week of gains. Plus 2.5% isn't much for the, a week of Bitcoin gains, but it is enough to kind of get people back in a good mood after a lot of traumatic and concerning news was coming out at the start of the week. So pay attention to everything we post online and on our insights page, and I will talk to you guys next time.